So I want to begin this morning by sharing with you some truth from Dr. Linda McNamara, who is the minister of the Laguna Woods Center for Spiritual Living. And sometimes people joke we have a lot of gray hair in our crowd here. Talk about a community of elders. It's if you don't go to this church, please go to that one, because it's full of so much wisdom, and I know that Linda would agree that this statement that she made probably came collectively from this community of elders about our world and our part on it. She says, wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone around the globe had a comfortable place to sleep and food to eat? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone had medical attention when needed, a safe place to raise their children, and shelter from the storms of life? Such a world is possible, and it begins right here with you and me. It begins with what we think, what we believe, what we say and do. Because we are one in consciousness with spiritual reality, you and I have an effect on the way the world is today and on what it can become. If we want our world to change, either globally or locally, we need to turn to the non-material realm of consciousness. As we establish peace within our hearts and minds, we will act peacefully in our personal lives. As more and more personal lives are lived with serenity, it will spread around the globe. We can empty our minds of the divisive beliefs which created the world's challenges in the first place and replace them with the knowledge that we are all one life and one consciousness. It is from this unity that we make personal choices which create a world which experiences a global heart of peace. Now, those are powerful words to me, and I don't know if they'll work, but I think it's worth a shot, isn't it? When it comes to seeing the world as we might want to change it around us, this simple yet profound idea that it begins with you. That we have the most beautiful blessing ever given to humankind, this gift of consciousness. That's what we mean when we say going within, this internal reality that at some level we all have and all share, yet at the same time helps us be unique and individual. It's a great power available to each and every one of us, and when we turn within it, it inspires us to transform ourselves and life around us. If it weren't for this place called within, we as humankind would have never discovered the virtues and values that we hold most dear. If not for going within, humankind would have never discovered the will nor the creativeness to create the printing press or the computer or electricity or those little stuffed animals where you press a button and they sing a whole song for you. Aren't those things cool? It's amazing what going within can do. Without going within, we would never have a sense of what we call the divine spark, a sense of a divine creator that we are all an expression of. It's a beautiful thing to be able to contact this place called within, and even a grander thing to realize what it can do in the world. But my message today is that we all have a part to play. Not so much in the drama of life, but in the realization of life. We all have a part to play because there's only one vehicle in which that thing called life can express itself, and that is through you. It's a grand responsibility. If the world is going to change, it is only going to change because of you. No pressure. But that's what it's going to take. Now, I like to consider myself a spiritual pragmatist in the sense that I don't spend a lot of time asking why are we all here, but I ask, since I am here, what the hell am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? I'm sometimes skeptical. I don't know if there is some separate intelligent being that created us and has a plan for everything around us, but I do know that I'm here and I believe in a divine presence, and if I wasn't created from something that had a divine thought in mind for the world, well, I know that there's something I'm connecting with now that I want to work towards creating peace in my life and peace for others and brotherhood and sisterhood and a sense of oneness around me. I know that that's something I can touch within my own soul and my own heart, so why not be true to it? I like this idea that there's a intelligent creator out there that's helping pull the strings on things. But I've always also liked this idea that the counterculture icon Alan Watts gave us too. He said that the problem with the Western mind is we think too often that we were brought into the world, as opposed to this idea that we grew out of it. He liked to promote this idea that each of us is grown out of the world. That as the world trees or creates mountains or rivers, so it peoples. And of course, the world wouldn't seek to create anything that would work against itself. That each of us, in a sense, is a kind of vitamin C for the world. That each of us has something special and important and meaningful in the evolution of this thing called consciousness and of this thing called life. Kai, can I talk about you for a second? It was so cool to see you up here and watching Kai sing. I can't help but think to myself, the world is doing something right? Right? I know you sang before, but you sing beautifully, and it was just awesome to see. We were so proud of it and so impressed that you were just up here being you. And Kai, you're so good at being you, but the rest of us, we struggle sometimes at being ourselves, don't we? It's hard to be you. For a lot of us, you sounds like some sort of alien term. We've lost track of what it is. But I tell you, your calling in the world, I don't mean to speak for you, so forgive me speaking this way, but your calling in the world isn't to find a cure for a disease or to stop hunger or come up with the great American novel or the great invention. It's just to be you. To be you, fully, unashamed, uninhibited, full blast, and on purpose is all that the world requires you to do. And if you can be that, then we fulfill that definition of purpose that Frederick Buechner gave us, which is that place where your deep gladness and the world's hunger meet. Your only responsibility is to be you and let everything else be a byproduct of that. Willing to be the world's vessel, willing to be a channel for this divine consciousness that we all share, to stand in your truth, to stand in your anger, to stand in your confusion, whatever is present for you, just to be you is the most sacred gift you can give to life around you. But for a lot of us, being you is something that's scary. In fact, sometimes we've spent all of our lives building these roles that don't necessarily express us, but help hold us back. I think it's an important question to ask ourselves. Are the roles I'm playing in my life helping me to be myself, or are they keeping me from being myself? They can be even both sometimes, but I think it's an important question to ask. I've been thinking about that a lot myself lately. I have some new roles in my life, like husband. What's it mean to be a good husband? And what if I'm not a good husband? Will she still love me? I've been a minister for 10 years now, and that's been really cool, and I want to be a really good minister. But what if I'm not a good minister? Will you still love me? Or a good parent or a good son? Thank you for your love, Cindy. Cindy said yes, so we'll find out during our annual meeting today at 12:30. I once had a really good friend who could never hold down a job. And the reason she could never hold down a job wasn't because she was bad at them, but she was too good at them. Do you know these kinds of people? It's one of these things, if she had a job as a waitress, she would master her section and then start mastering everybody else's section too. She'd pour coffee for everybody, water, and help with the orders. And if she was working in an office, she would do her job to perfection, but then start doing everybody else's job for them too, and make extra copies, and come in early and stay late. And she would do this until she burnt out and finally needed to step back and just do her own thing. But then everyone around was pissed at her. Hey, why didn't you get coffee over to my station? Hey, those copies aren't done. It's another important question to ask ourselves sometimes. Do people love me for who I am or the role that I play for them? My friend's true heart was to be a part of a team. She wanted to thrive and be a part of something around her, but also this role-playing expressed this belief that she had to be needed. She had to make herself indispensable so that she would be wanted by folks around her. So she was working against her ability to be her true self. So that's another important question to ask ourselves when it comes to being you. Are you really committed and focused on being committed to being the best you can be in your life, or just to being what everybody else wants you to be around you and holding yourself within that role? But we all know that those who really love you, maybe they love you for the role you play too, but they really love you for who you are. I was really searching for some grand historical example of my point, but I kept going back to Ron Howard in Happy Days. Do you remember Ron Howard in Happy Days? And you remember that show, Happy Days, with Ralph Malph and Potsy, Arthur Fonzarelli, Joni and Chachi, and then you see Chachi at the Republican convention, you go, oh my gosh, there's Chachi, It was very exciting. He's still around. But it was this great show in the 70s and 80s. It was probably the most successful show of that time, and it was inspired by George Lucas's American Graffiti, which Ron Howard was in, and it had the first rock and roll soundtrack. It was a big deal, and George Lucas went to make some crazy space movie after that. But the show was so successful, and Ron Howard as Richie Cunningham was such a big star, but he always wanted to be a film director. That's what he wanted to do. Richie Cunningham, a film director, everyone thought? And so he decided to leave the show, and everyone went crazy. Even the Fonz lost his cool. He didn't really laugh the first service either. I thought it was... But everyone wanted to play that role. It's kind of like when George Clooney left ER. You remember that? At least you could still look at him because he was going to the big screen, but he was really popular. Or when your favorite sports player leaves your team to go to another, what do? We burn their jersey. That's what we do. But Ron Howard had to step out of what everyone wanted him to be who he really was. And today he's one of the most successful movie directors there is. And I'm sure people still look at him sometime and say, hey, Richie Cunningham, or even worse, hey, Opie Cunningham, because he was Opie Taylor on Andy Griffith's show too. But don't let people keep you or try and make you Richie Cunningham or Opie Cunningham your whole life. You have to be you, and that's that deep courage and commitment that it takes to be fully ourselves. I love something that Thomas Merton said. He said, if you want to identify me, ask me not where I live, or what I like to eat, or how I comb my hair, but ask me what I am living for. In detail, ask me what I think is keeping me from living fully for the thing I want to live for. And what, if anything, my friends, is keeping you from living for that which you want to live for? And whatever it is, get it out of there. And be committed to that thing called you, because it's what the world needs and calls for around you. And aren't those most amazing connections that we make in our lives, not through the roles that we play, but when we transcend them? When a child gets to be there for her mother and support, when a teacher lets down his or her hair and shares something personal and it inspires the student to do the same thing, when a congregant does a prayer for the minister, when you admit to having a bad week to the waiter or waitress and they say, oh, I've had an awful week too, and you almost get excited and how you connect about how terrible your world's were. There's something about that ability that not just when we fulfill our roles, but when we transcend them, that we truly find that heart and connection. But it's so important to be able to identify ourselves beyond those roles that we play, as much as we love them, as wonderful as they are, to get in touch with the solidarity, the soul of who you are. We're often afraid to let who that is out, because sometimes we can find those roles aren't the channel, they're the defense mechanism. I was always inspired by something the great psychologist Carl Rogers said. He said, I have found that the very feeling which has seemed to me most private, most personal, and hence most incomprehensible by others, has turned out to be an expression for which there is a resonance in many other people. It has led me to believe that what is most personal and unique in each one of us is probably the very element which would, if it were shared or expressed, speak most deeply to others. Isn't that some idea? That thing that you're most scared, perhaps, to express and to become is that very thing, if you chose to express it, people would most resonate with and value. There's so much importance to being yourself. Do not let you become an alien to the life that you're living. Know what you feels like, know what you is, and commit to living from and for it in your life. And when you do that, you'll build a sense of trust with yourself. If you feel disconnected from yourself, the first thing is to create a space to have that reconnection. Get rid of the space that's just to make money. Get rid of that space that's to show off or please somebody else. And just create that space in nature or in your home just to be you. Put down the to-do list and just be with yourself. Take a walk, read a poem, listen to some music, but just be. And you may find that you've just reconnected with an old friend you haven't spoken to in a long time. And when this reconnection happens, keep following it, keep utilizing it. A few weeks ago, I got to be at Disneyland. I was in the longest line of all time for Splash Mountain, but I was reminded of the story of Brer Rabbit, and Brer Rabbit had this thing called his laughing place, right? The laughing place. That laughing place is that place where you can go where you can just be yourself, where you can just be you, where you can sing and dance, where you're not worried about other people's judgments, where you're heard, where you can get whatever's on your chest off with no filter whatsoever. This is what inspired Walt Disney to want to make a film about Brer Rabbit, was this idea of discovering the laughing place. That's why he made animation. That's why he wanted to make Disneyland, a place where all our money would go away and we stood in line forever and ever. But he wanted to create that laughing place. The funny aside about Disney is he did eventually find it. He would work so hard and he'd go see this nurse after a long day, and he'd bitch to her. He'd complain about his life and everything going on, and she'd just listen, and they would laugh, and they called that their laughing place. What is your laughing place? What is that thing that gives you a sense of home? I love how Maya Angelou put it. She said, "The ache for home lives in all of us. The safe place where we can go as we are and not be questioned." Give yourself that space, that sacred space, be it with someone you care about or just on your lonesome or alone with your understanding of the divine, to re-inspire that sense of you and to bring it into your life. The greatest lie that has ever been told is that you are not significant. The greatest mistruth that has ever been spoken is that who you are doesn't matter. Hear that. For who you are is significant. It is just as important to this thing called life as the sun and the sky and the stars. That's how important you are. But if you don't be it or become it, we're letting down that world around us. This has been one of the great farces. I know we're a religion, but one of the biggest problems with religion is they've always had a problem with you being you. They've always struggled with that. Even if you go to the ancient myths, the gods are afraid man's going to discover his power. They want to keep man downtrodden. Don't know who you are. And we see that expressed today in certain religions where you're born a sinner. You don't even have a chance and you've already screwed up, right? Or even in some Eastern views of life, the only way you can be enlightened is you have to get rid of yourself completely. Don't be yourself, then you'll be somebody. And even in our kind of pop spirituality, we demonize this idea that we have an ego. Don't think about yourself. Get rid of your ego, and then maybe you'll be inspired to write a book and make money and sell real estate or whatever the book's asking us to do. And I don't believe in any of this at all. Who you are is an expression of this grand, great thing called life. The longest legacy that has ever been. You are a child of that legacy. You are an expression of that life. Your charge, your call, is to become and embody and express as much of that life as you can. And by doing that, by finding that courage to be that you you are becoming not only what you need, but what the world needs around you. So I appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for coming. It's great to be here.